2, 1. Rock and roll. Hey there, everybody. Coach Mark here. Happy Sunday. Hope you're all having a wonderful day today. You can see what the topic is today, and that is whether or not should strongman athletes bench press. Yes, they absolutely should, 100%. However, the big thing to think about is not getting hyperfixated on a powerlifting style bench press. This is something that I think can cause a lot of problems when it comes to getting information on training is source evaluation. If I look up how to squat, I'm going to get different answers depending on who I ask. If I ask a bodybuilder how to squat, they're going to tell me a very different technique than, say, someone who does multiply powerlifting, for example. And with that in mind, we want to think, why should a strongman athlete bench press? What are we trying to extract in terms of benefit from the bench press for the strongman athlete? And in that case, something like a powerlifting style bench press with the wide grip, the arch, the short ROM, that's a really good technique for moving more weight on the bar. It's competition specific. However, for a strongman athlete, the bench press is more of a developmental exercise. We want to think of it as we are trying to develop specific physical attributes, right? Whereas if we try to bench like a power lifter and hopes that it would help us do better in strongman, it'd be like telling an ultra marathon runner to have the same running stride as a sprinter. It's the same category, yes, but ultimately they're different goals and applications of the same movement pattern. So what would that look like? What is the strongman bench pressing for? Ultimately, bigger and stronger pecs, delts, and triceps, upper body stability, and also a little more pressing volume without excessive back fatigue. I know for myself, after heavy deads, it can be a little hard to train something like the log push press, whereas a seated pressing variation, not so much, especially if I'm on a slight incline. And depending on the incline I'm using, it actually will more closely emulate the log than a standing press anyways. For example, something like a 40 to 70 degree incline, or really 40 to 60 is a really great option here, but we'll talk a bit more about that. So here's a few of my favorite variations when it comes time to bench press for the strongman athlete. I think 40 to 50 degree incline is the sweet spot. When you get closer to 60 to 70, that is definitely more of a shoulder press, but that's neither here nor there. But I do find that this more moderate incline, the 40 to 50, is probably the best bang for the buck for a strongman athlete in terms of transference to the log press in particular. Because if you look at the torso angle at the log press, especially at the weakest point, there is a certain degree of layback. This is normal. Just due to the log itself, the cylinder, it's going to push the weight out in front of you, but it's one of those things. If the weight is out in front of you, that is not a powerful position, so instead we're going to opt to lean back. You can look at any good log presser. There is a certain degree of layback. It's mandated by the implement, so that's why this incline variation is really nice. The floor press is another great one. That's just good for pure tricep power. That one, you think right here, this is where you tend to die on your press at that 90-degree joint angle. So integrating in floor presses is really helpful here, especially if you do them with a slow eccentric. I love pairing a slow eccentric floor press with a push press log if we're in a peaking phase, but we can talk about that on another day. And then last but not least, good old close grip bench press. This is great for helping retain mobility through the shoulders and chest, as well as pec and tricep strength. And when I say close grip bench press, I'm not talking, the TikTok super narrow. You just want to think a little narrower than your normal grip. So for example, if you bench with your pinky on the rings, you might just move it to where your index finger is against the smooth phase, or even just a couple fingers out from the smooth phase of the barbell. You don't need to be going inside of your shoulders. It's not good on the joints for a lot of us, especially if you are a broad-shouldered individual. Now, with that, too, when it comes to benching for the strongman athlete, I love rotating implements where I can. Dumbbells, neutral grip, or Swiss bars. I think axle, I will pick the axle over the barbell when it comes to pressing whenever I can, as I find it feels a lot better on my joints. It also strengthens the forearm, and I like pressing with a false grip. The axle works a lot better there. Now, there is some concern when I talk about false grip about the bar dropping on your face. I'll be honest, I think it's a little overblown. Obviously, don't try to do a new 1RM on an axle bench press your first day out. Build into it. However, again, why are we 1RMing the bench press for a strongman athlete? The log on an incline is actually a really fun one as well. It's actually coming up next January at a local show too, so it'll be interesting to see how they do that. But a 30-degree log incline bench is a really fun variation for helping hit the upper chest and triceps. Plus, with the barrel on the log, it kind of stops you, so it turns it into a bit of a board press situation as well. Again, these are all just options I like for helping reduce joint fatigue and discomfort. It's one of those things, the longer you've been at this, it's nice to be able to change out those pressure gradients across the soft tissue. Programming wise, anywhere from 3 to 20 reps, honestly. Get that work in on this. I just don't see the utility of a 1 rep max flat bench for a strongman athlete versus something like an 8 rep max 40-degree incline press. And the reason why you'll even see those super high reps is with dumbbells in particular, it can be really draining just getting them into place. It's something I've talked about with some of my athletes and in-person clients. I personally feel that once you get above about 80 pounds with dumbbells, you're losing a couple reps just fighting them into place, and that gets more pronounced as you move up in weight. Like for myself, I've got a pair of dumbbells that go all the way up to 130 a hand. I want to get there for sure, but right now I'm more focused on my 10 rep on the 40-degree incline bench. However, would I love to chase down 130 a hand for 8 on the flat bench? Absolutely, and down the road that's a great option. However, one of those things to keep in mind is at that weight, I'm going to lose a couple reps just getting them into place due to the size of them. They're awkward. There's a lot of work there. So just something to keep in mind there with priorities with your dumbbells. And then here are some ratios that are worth kind of chasing for yourself if you are programming. And bear in mind, these numbers are based off of either an axle or a barbell. You'll need to massage them and play with them if you're using something like a dumbbell or a board press or a Swiss bar, etc., etc. And these numbers are all scaled off of a log push press max. So for example, with the 40-degree incline, you want to be hitting 55 to 70% of your log max for sets of 5 to 8 consistently. So that might be something between 165 to 210 for a 300-pound log push presser. And remember, these aren't max effort sets. These are volumizing sets for the sets of 5 to 8, okay? With the 60-degree incline, 45 to 65% or 135 to 195. If it's the floor press, closer to 80 to 95% or 240 to 285. Close grip bench, 75 to 90% or 225 to 275. Now, if you're well above these numbers, then it's a good tell you do not have a strength issue with the log. You have a skill issue, in which case you need to do more work such as pause, dip, drive, push presses, blast press, learning your technique, because strength is not your bottleneck if you're above these ratios. Again, when it comes to bench press for the strongman athlete, it's an accessory. It is subservient to improving your overhead pressing capabilities. So as such, the variations that I've lined out here and these ratios just give you a good bit of target work in terms of how to go about, addressing the bench press question of how much you bench. Also, if you do want to simplify this process, I offer one-to-one coaching. It's what I do full-time. Odds are good. I'd love to work with you. But that's all I really got for you folks today. I hope you're having a great one, and I'll see you next time.